it immediately feels like, somebody's poking your hand because I recommend sensitizing because those inside the tooth.
All right, let me see if I fixed something because I was lagging
And that really works. It can make a difference with it.
and I do not know why. So let's see if we fix this.
There are taste sweeteners, and then there are kind buns. Made with ingredients you know and love, like whole nuts, real fruit, and a drizzle of dark chocolate. To your taste buds and your body a favor. Do the kind thing.
Come on.
Discover Media Oil Juice Lotion. Nourishing oil and fast absorbing lotion. Refined with indulgent scent. Skin. Media Oil Juice Lotion.
Let's see. Is this working? Weird. Let me see. Go to the channel. Let's see. What is going on here? Okay, let's see. What is going on here? Am I live? Am I live? Ah, there we go. Okay, I am back. Technical difficulty figured out and mastered. So let me just start at the top. Welcome to the most electrifying channel in YouTube entertainment. Today, I am the earth shaking, earthquaking, thunder making, awesome dude known as Lee Cole the Fourth, and thank you for being on the channel. So I might as well just do my spiel again because YouTube decided that it was going to mess with my algorithm. But you can't stop me, YouTube. You can't stop me. Anyways, I am talking about Cruel Intentions. I went to see it in the movies tonight. It is the 28-year anniversary, and I've always loved this movie since I was a kid. So I saw this movie when I was 15, snuck in. It was an R-rated flick. So I was talking about this movie and why I feel it is a great movie, even for today's standard. So let's just dive right into this. My pros for the movie. This movie changed the face of certain issues that were talked about back at the time. I love this movie because back in the 90s, there were some things that were being like really dived into. And I also have a love for Sarah Michelle Gellar. So, automatically love this film. And back in the time that it was released, a lot of these actors weren't known. So you had Selma Blair, who would later be in Hellboy. You had Sarah Michelle Gellar, who was hot off of Buffy and would be in one of the biggest horror films of the time, I Know What You Did Last Summer. You had Ryan Phillippe, who would co-star opposite of her. You had Reese Witherspoon, a young Reese Witherspoon. This movie had quite possibly what would be now a dream ensemble of these actors in their prime, just getting ready to break onto the scene. So I'm going to go through my overview, pros, cons, and whether or not this is worth it 20 years later. So first off, my pros, which are quite a few. This movie, well, let me just start from the beginning. The theme of this movie is that you have a stepbrother and a stepsister who are in constant competition. They make a very twisted sort of bet. The bet is that Ryan Phillippe is infatuated with this girl who's a virgin and hasn't been with anyone, and he bets Sarah Michelle Gellar that he can sleep with her. And Sarah Michelle Gellar thinks that it's impossible, even with his reputation. So she says that she will sleep with him if he completes the bet. And he says to her that he will give up his car, which is a beautiful Jaguar Sportster. Love that car in the movie. It fits his personality. So, you get subtext. He's done a lot. He has no respect for anyone that he's with. And Reese Witherspoon is the beacon of chastity and hope. But what makes this film really stand out for me is the acting. For the 90s, looking back on it now, this is some really good acting by its leads. Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Phillippe have this on screen presence and this kind of sarcastic chemistry that comes out in every single line that they deliver. When they are on chemistry and there is such a back and forth between them that just works on a lot of different levels. And it is really quite a thing to see. This movie is so ahead of its time and we don't even realize seeing it. I literally saw this when I was a kid. I was a teenager. I mean, this was a teenager film. And I watch it 20 years later and it still holds up. It really still the acting I mean, looking at it from a critiquing perspective, the acting is still stellar. There were parts where I genuinely still laugh to this day, like just the way Sarah Michelle Gellar and Selma Blair interact with each other, and how you can see the contempt for this girl in every line that she delivers. It's something special on screen. The chemistry just works. Reese Witherspoon and Ryan Phillippe and their summer love affair, you buy it because they don't start off in the love. It's very built up to the moment. So when this movie reaches its climax, it's shocking and it's really touching in a lot of different ways for a film that's not meant to be that. This film, in many ways, is meant to be kind of satire towards the whole notion of love and what kids conceive as love at that time. And they don't shy away from a lot of topics. Everyone across the board is pretty good in the lines that they deliver. And it's really awesome to see these people really pouring a lot of themselves into this role. You could see that they worked very hard to achieve each character and to really set their character apart. And the chemistry between all the actors is amazing. Joshua Jackson, if you don't know, he's from Dawson's Creek. He was on a roll at this time, and playing the stereotypical gay best friend before it was beat to death, he does it so well for the few moments he's in the film. I mean, literally, this director does not waste any of these actors' talents on throwaway scenes. I mean, they quite literally all have a purpose within this story. And I think that's what's missing from a lot of films. You have a lot of these films where the side characters and the best friends are all kind of just there to move along the story, but they have no real purpose. And here, from Selma Blair's snotty mom to the headmaster at the end of the film, all of these people have real purpose in this story. Now, my cons with this film is the fact that it is dated, and some of the cliches of movies of this time are in there. You know, you have the purity person, you have Ryan Phillippe, the sarcastic, jaded bad boy. You have Sarah Michelle Gellar, the elitist, really nasty person, and you have the token black guy, so to speak. Um, but it's funny because this movie realizes it, and they poke fun of that. I mean, you have them saying lines you would expect to hear from that character, and it's almost like the director realizes what the film is. But what he does with the story is so elegant in its delivery. And it's a shame because when I was younger, I couldn't appreciate the kind of filmmaking that was on display at the time. It's like going back in the vault and rewatching a movie you haven't watched in years, and then you catch things that you never could have caught as a kid. You know, things you never picked up on as a youngster, as a youngin, going into that film. And then I was like, wow, there was so much I missed. Like, for instance, there's a scene in the beginning of the movie, and my mom brought this to my attention because it was bonding day, and I never noticed it, and I wish I did. But in the beginning of the film, Ryan Phillippe is traveling around with his most prized possession, his journal of all of his adventures and misdeeds. And in the beginning of the film, it's on the front seat with him to kind of symbolize his loneliness. Like, all he has is his thoughts. And spoiler alert, but it's been 20 years, so if you haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil it. At the end of the film, Reese Witherspoon gets the most fantastic revenge on Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, and destroys her because she gets Ryan Phillippe's character Sebastian killed, and destroys her life. And at the end, and she's driving off in his car that he left for her, and on the front seat is his journal. And it symbolizes the fact that even though he's dead, and even though she won't ever see him again, that journal was his most possession before he met her. So at the end of the movie, the one thing she has left of him that was truly him is in the front seat with her, kind of like to symbolize that his memory still lives on, and that he got to out this manipulative woman, and he still gets to travel with her. And I think there's something really powerful about that moment in the film. And it's little things like this where this movie was never big with the critics, but has become a cult classic. And that's what makes this re-release so special, is the fact that they acknowledge how ahead of the time this movie was. Because if it was released now, it would have never gained traction. With the SJWs and the things we got going on in entertainment, they would have torpedoed this movie. But it's so relevant. The one of the best lines that stuck out to me was when Sarah Michelle Gellar is talking to Ryan Phillippe, Sebastian, his character, and she says to him, when a guy sleeps with a bunch of girls, it's considered like he's the man, but when a woman does it, she's looked at and degraded. And the way she delivers the line isn't in a "oh, I'm woman, hear me roar" kind of way. It's more in a, this is how it is, and if people don't like how I feel about being with a lot of guys, then oh well. And she kind of hides in this pretentious, elitist shell, and who she really is different from what she puts on to the rest of the world. And he's the same way. He's intelligent, he's good looking, he's got the car, and he can have any girl he wants to, but he's empty. And in the beginning of the film, they mirror each other in this sense. And then towards the end, something beautiful happens, and she becomes jealous because the duality that they share through this film is broken after he falls for Reese Witherspoon. And there's something so poetic about the delivery of this by the director. He handles everything very well. And it's not a typical, like, teen love story that was coming out at the time. It's a very jaded, kind of messed up view, and a real good look at young love and the realities of these situations. And I find it really great how this guy delivered this type of film. Because done any other way, it would have been so just scorned. But because he like puts satire in there with the characters, even the most awkward scene is hilarious to watch. Like the scene where Sebastian is talking to Selma Blair, and he basically took her virginity, and she says something, and he pushes her off the bed, and I'm just laughing out loud because it's so funny. Like, just the satire in it is hilarious, and just the way he's so snarky about such an important event. He like looks at her and goes, "This is what we call quiet time." And I mean, it's lines like this that make this film something really special. I mean, Ryan Phillippe, his expressions in this movie, along with Sarah Michelle Gellar, is some of the greatest like delivery without saying anything. This movie has a lot of moments of just facial expression and method acting that I really appreciate. Um, you know, in my cons, I don't have many, but it is a 90s film, and we all know how 90s dialogue was. Some of the shots are a little wonky. Um, but I mean, to that, I don't have many complaints to this day. Even song placement in this film is just so masterfully done. I was saying my favorite song in the film was by The Beer. It's called A Bittersweet Symphony, and it's about life. And it so fits this movie because the words go with what is happening on screen at the time, which is really a lost art. We talked about Captain Marvel's horrible placement of music, and then you have this where I didn't even know who this band was until after this movie, and I got the CD, and it just fits so elegantly to what the movie stands for. Bittersweet Symphony is about life and about the bitter notes in life, and how you have the contradictions and the contrasts between what you think life is and what it actually is. And it fits this movie because the characters start off with what they think their lives are, and it's something completely different. And through these events, they are broken wide open, and they're forced to see themselves as who they are. And essentially, Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Phillippe, their personalities destroy each other. Only I think he gets the win in the end. And it's really poetic. This movie is like poetic, and it's masterful in the craft. This guy crafted together the perfect movie of sexual exploration, of two people that were really terrible, that were doomed to destroy each other and essentially do. Love, life, growing up. I mean, he hits those notes pretty seamlessly through this movie. And it's really beautiful to watch. Even 20 years later, it is masterful work at this genre. And in a time period where there were about 150 of these kind of movies coming out, because that's what Hollywood does. It's great to see such a strong cast in a film, such a young, strong cast of people virtually unknown at the time, just having fun and making a really good film. So my overall view of this movie is this. This movie stands apart in the pack of films that came out. I mean, you had like Walk to Remember and things like that. This movie isn't a love story, and it is. It isn't serious, but it is. It has misplaced humor in all the right places. This movie does a lot of things right, and it became a cult classic for a reason. Because at the time, we all didn't know it when we went to see it. We were just seeing it for that scene with Selma Blair and Sarah Michelle Gellar when they kissed. Honestly, that's why I was going to see it. My friends were like, "Oh, you got to see this movie." But now, looking at it from an adult perspective, this film did a lot of things that movies weren't going into. They were exploring, but they weren't quite there yet. And eventually Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and things like that would break those modes of thinking. And this broke the love story because it was the bad guy who should have, he still won in the end. Essentially, he still got the girl in the end because he still had her carrying his memory with her. And there's something great about that. there's something so great that they don't have to tell you that they ended up together and they lived happily ever after. Reese Witherspoon did. She fell in love, she had a romantic moment, and she destroyed this horrible girl at the end of the film. And I think there's something really powerful in that moment that makes this movie special. And I've probably ruined a lot of different plot points, but this movie is worth seeing if you have never seen it, just for the fact of how artistically made this film is and the things that it was doing for the time that it was made at. And I mean, look it up. This is like the 90s. This is like they had the rotary phone, okay, and the old flip phone that was still kind of big, and the weird little flip out thing that the phones were doing at the time. And it's not just 90s nostalgia, but really good filmmaking in general that was on display at that time. You had these gems that went under the radar, and I'm glad that they released it. So, in close, this is, I believe, my third video. Was it my second? I try to do 2 or 3 videos a day. I lose track, but this is my second video for you guys. A little improv to review, if you will, and hopefully I spur someone to go and rent it or check it out. I mean, it's so cheap now. You could probably YouTube the full movie, but I mean, watch this movie and really sit back and enjoy how it took all of the stereotypes of the time, and how probably the SJWs would be going nuts watching this film right now because it is so like opposite of the way the mindset is in Hollywood today. So check this movie out. That's all I can say. My overall arcing view, we've got it on a limited release. I don't know if that's a worldwide thing, but if you could see it in the theater, man, the theater gave it some really good effect. And, it was a good waste of time. But, anyways, that's my take, my perspective of the day. I really enjoyed this movie, and I really hope that me reviewing it will get a bunch of people to see this film because it really is, by all senses of the word, a classic 90s film. And we didn't have many of those. The time made some really strange film, but man, I love it. So, in close, this is Week the 4th. This is my channel. If you like this review, please smash that melee. Hit the subscribe button if you see this and you're a new subscriber. And my Twitter, which I will be promoting, the Twitter is @1217. In case y'all didn't know, feel free to follow me. I do these impromptu live stream reviews. I apparently do them during terrible times because there's like 2 or 3 other big streams going on while I decided to throw this one out here. I really got to get a better sense of timing. But when I got something to say about a movie, I just shoot from the hip and hope for the best. But this film is great. If you just join me, watch Cruel Intentions. I watched the 20-year re-release in theaters, and movie magic. Fine example of how people should be doing love stories. Don't do the same thing. Put a spin on it. Make satire again. Tackle tough subjects. But, this is all I got to say about this review. Thank you very much if you join me. And as always, me and Goose the Cat will see you at the theaters. Good night, and God bless.